Okay, good afternoon, students. Hope you all had a good week. My name's Mr. Savage, and I'm here to deliver an assembly on resilience. And when I was trying to figure out which assembly to do and who to talk about in terms of resilience, there wasn't anyone that I could think of better than Ray Krone. I'm going to introduce you to Ray in just a minute, but I just want to tell you how I got to know Ray and learn about his story. In 2004, I was a student at Northern Arizona University, and I took a course in criminal justice with a professor called Thomas Streed, who Ray knows very well. Mr. Streed taught us about Ray's case. Ray was, in fact, the 100th person in America to be released from death row due to DNA evidence. He was innocent of all crimes and was freed, and has gone on to be an advocate for the death penalty, for getting rid of the death penalty, excuse me, and has done some amazing work. So, Ray, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom.
And great to see you again. So, Ray, do you think you could just give our students just a sort of overall idea of your story and what happened?
Sure. Yeah, in 1991, I was questioned about a murder of a local barmaid. She'd been found stabbed to death in the men's bathroom of her bar by the owner the next morning. No evidence of a break-in, no sign of a robbery. They believed it had to be somebody that knew her. They questioned co-workers. One of them mentioned me as a boyfriend. I was questioned about that. I was not a boyfriend. She lived with the man, but they questioned me for 2 different days. At one point, they took casts of my teeth. The third day, I was arrested based on a bite mark that the local medical examiner said he found on her breast that matched my teeth. That 7 months' time, I was actually in trial in just 7 months. I had a court-appointed attorney who was paid $5,000 to defend me. There really wasn't any defense. They had a bite mark expert who testified that marks on the body matched my teeth, that my teeth were unique as a result of a car accident when I was young, that those bite marks happened at the time of death, and that made me Ray Krone the murderer. I was home in bed. I was totally dumbfounded by all this. There was no way I could be convicted. I was innocent. Nevertheless, it just took the jury 3 hours to find me guilty. They convicted me of murder and kidnapping. They acquitted me of sexual assault, amazingly so, because the prosecutor's theory was I went there at closing time, helped her close, forced myself on her, realized what I'd done, and had to kill her to silence her. The jury wasn't buying that story. Nevertheless, they did convict me of murder. When it came time for what they call aggravating mitigating hearing, which is put on first parts of the prosecution where they argue why this is a death penalty deserving case, why it's above and beyond the norm. They used the bite mark as an aggravating factor, said it was excessive pain and suffering on the tissue of her breast. It was either while she was still alive, which was as I said, excessive pain and suffering, or it was after she was dead, and that's just heinous and depraved. The judge found that as aggravating. You have to have at least one aggravating factor in order to get a death sentence. Then it's the defense's turn to put on mitigating. I said, how do you mitigate something you didn't do? I told my attorney that. He said, well, you tell the judge that. I did. I was promptly called an unremorseful killer, a monster. It was actually the snaggletooth killer in the newspapers, and I was sentenced to death. 3 years on death row. My conviction was overturned based on prosecution of withheld evidence. A videotape made by their expert was given to the defense just the day before trial started. My attorney was actually awake, paid attention. He objected. He said, Your Honor, I've never seen this. You can't allow this in. The judge did. That was a violation of the rules of discovery. You have a right to know what evidence is going to be used against you and receive it in a timely manner. The Supreme Court of Arizona said that judge was wrong, and they ordered a new trial. By now, people had been executed in the state of Arizona. When I originally told my family, my friends, not to worry, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. There's nothing. Everything will work out. By now, my family knew it wouldn't work out. People were being executed. I was going to another trial. We found an attorney out of California. We didn't want anything to do with Arizona's politics. My mom, my family cashed in their mortgage or remortgaged their house. They cashed in their retirement funds. We got an attorney out of California. That trial started in 1996. In comparison, it lasted 7 weeks. Over 500 exhibits were introduced. We had 3 bite mark experts testify for the defense. We actually found out that DNA had been taken from the bite mark that I was supposed to have made on her breast. A saliva sample was actually tested. I was completely exonerated, excluded from that DNA. And I thought, finally, imagine the just how great that felt in the court that day to hear somebody testify that the DNA from the bite mark that was supposed to be my bite mark was not my DNA. But I still didn't realize how important a death penalty case is for prosecutors. This is a win at all costs for them. This is the highest accolades they can get. The highest honor is to get a conviction in a death penalty case at whatever it takes. And in 1996, in closing arguments, that prosecutor told the jury to disregard that DNA, ignore that DNA. We know who did it. He's sitting right here, and you're responsible to see that justice is done. The jury came back in 3.5 days and found me guilty again. Now, again, we're stunned. The jurors are wiping tears out of their eyes. The judge can't hardly read the verdict. My attorney's hanging on my shoulders, crying, saying, my God, Ray, why didn't they see the truth? I look over at the prosecution, the victim's family. They're jumping up and celebrating like they won the big game. And all I can think is, whoa, stop, back up, rewind. This can't be happening. It's not, no, that's wrong. At which point I heard my mom and sister screaming behind me in the courtroom, and turn around and see it in their face and look at my mom and say, Mom, don't cry. It's okay. My little sister, Amy, I'll be all right. They weren't just doing it to me. They were doing it to my family. Again, at sentencing, the same thing happened, only this time when I told my attorney I have nothing to mitigate. An example of anybody in any profession that does the best that they can to their abilities, to their experience. He said, you let me handle this. And for the next 2 hours, he went over pieces of evidence that came out during that trial. Why footprints in the kitchen where the knife murder weapon was taken from? Same footprints, same floor, tile floor in the men's bathroom. They went and bought a size 9.5 sneaker to match that print. I wear a size 11. My bare foot was bigger than the whole shoe they bought. Fingerprints, palm prints, hair and saliva on the body and in the bathroom did not match me. And when my attorney was done, the judge said this case would haunt him for the rest of his life. He said he had lingering residual doubt of my guilt. And so he sentenced me to 25 to life for the murder. And I'm like, whoopee, wow, you don't think I did it, but you gave me 25 to life for the murder. And then he went on to aggravate the kidnapping and added 21 more. So I was facing 46 years for something I didn't do. I was 35 when this happened. I would have had to live to be 81 years old before the opportunity to have a parole. Our prisons are very violent. They are racist. The medical staff there is usually people that can't get insurance on the outs. I was going to die from something. I just wasn't going to be executed. Thankfully, after almost 10 years went by, the Arizona State Legislature has recognized DNA as very valid, definitive evidence of Gouts proving guilt or innocence. Most of the time, people only have a short window to bring up new evidence, but they realized DNA was different, and they passed a new law allowing for post-conviction relief DNA testing, provided it had to be properly maintained, that it had direct bearing on guilt or innocence, and that it was never used, it hadn't been tested before. We were fortunate the Phoenix Police Department had kept the clothing from Kim. It had been cut off of her in the bathroom, thrown in the corner. They had saved that, and we surmised, our experts surmised, that whoever stabbed her so hard with a butcher knife that it bent the blade probably might have cut themselves. And we were able to get a look at that clothing, her underwear, her pants. There was staining on it. The judge ordered that testing done. And thankfully, after 10 years, 3 months, and 8 days, not only did that DNA exclude me, but it actually matched the person who was in the databank, the National DNA Databank, that lived right down the road from the murder. He subsequently took a plea bargain, and I was released after 10 years, 3 months, and 8 days to start my life all over again at the age of 45.
Right. I mean, it's an incredible story, and I think there's so many things we could unpick, and obviously you and I know we've talked about your case a lot over the years. Because this assembly is about resilience, I just wondered if you could speak to that to our students on two things really. One is, during those 10 years, how did you remain resilient in the harshest situation? I mean, I'm now just a little bit older than you were when you got arrested, and the idea of that, it makes it kind of seems more tangible to me now than it did when I was a student and we spoke. But so something in relation to how you demonstrated resilience there, but then also, you know, with COVID-19 and everything that's been going on in the world at the moment, I know students in my school and staff and people with our community are going through hard situations. Not the same as yours, of course, but what advice would you give to them possibly about kind of, you know, how to deal with it?
Well, first, we have to acknowledge we all have trials and tribulations in our life. It's just the intensity, the duration that may vary for us. And I can tell you one thing. First off, in this thing, it was obvious that I knew I was innocent. I believe God knew that I was innocent. My family believed in me. I was 35 years old. They knew who I was, what I had done in my life, and were able to stand beside me. I only had to tell them once I didn't do it. They believed me. I know my mom had sent the Bible, and I found strength in the stories of like Job and Jonah, the horrors that befell them with their faith in God, and still in the end, we're better off for it. And I also realized that I didn't know anything about the justice system. I believed in the death penalty. I believed our trials were fair. I believed they got the right person. And I had to learn about a justice system. Now, at the age of 35, I read law books, but it gave me strength to know, I think most of all, two things. Besides the supportive family and my emotional strength, it also realized that I'm not the only one this happened to. I realized that I was not the only person who was on death row as an innocent person. There was other people that I met there through working with other. There was 120 on Arizona's death row. That also gave me the strength to know there's not just me. There's others out there that have to fight this. And I had to be strong for my family and my friends who were standing up for me. I didn't know where the help was going to come from, and that's something we all have to realize. We can't. All of us can't do it alone, but we also, can't rely on somebody else to do it for us. We have to be part of the program, both together.
It sounds like to kind of summarize what you're saying there for the students listening, I think one is self-belief, and you had that because you knew that you were innocent. But the other one is agency, and actually putting action into place, and reading the law books and reading up around your case and doing those kind of things. So being proactive obviously really helped you as well.
Absolutely. And those things they're not always easy, but it's what you have to do.
Okay. And Ray, if I could, maybe a message to those students who are going through a tough time, anyone, and your advice to them.
I tell you, it's easier said than done. I couldn't write a book exactly what I did, but I can say you have to stay the course. I played sports in my life, and for those that played sports, you didn't want to let your team down. You might not be the hero to win the game, but you certainly didn't want to be the one that cost your team the game. And so you always try to stay in there and do the best you can, and be honest with what's happening. And the more you're educated, the more honest you can be. But I tell you, as you go through those difficult times, and I use the example like in our car. That's why the windshield's bigger than the rear view mirror. What's ahead of us? Our life is ahead of us. That's why we look out the windshield. We look forward. We keep moving forward. We refer to our rear view mirror now and then to remember and reflect on where we went, where we were, where we've been, but not to continue to dwell there. We have to dwell in the future. We have to see the big pictures that's in front of us and keep searching and keep reaching and keep driving on.
That's such a great analogy. I've not heard that one before. Is that a Ray Krone original?
It is, as far as I know.
Love it. Listen, Ray, thank you so much for taking the time out to introduce yourself. I've already spoken to quite a lot of my students about you, as I always do, to raise awareness. But I think this will really speak to a much wider audience in school. So we just want to say thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate it. And we wish you all the best in your kind of future endeavours and the continued work you're doing about the death penalty.
Thank you so much, Thomas. It was a great honor to be there. To your students, hello, a shout out to you. I wish you well in the future. If there's ever anything I can do, please holler.
Thank you, Ray.
Take care.